I had been living in India for 2 months when I noticed a puffy swelling in my big left toe. Normally, a little swelling like that wouldn't concern me, but it was dusty and it was hot and dirty where I was living. Everywhere I looked, I saw a potential source for some exotic infection or disease. I was paranoid. And I imagined that there must be parasites living there. And furthermore, I imagined that they were probably having parties in my toe. And then I thought, well, what do parasites serve at parties? Whatever it is, presumably it's part of me, and that idea really disgusted me. So when a friend of mine, a coworker who had lived in town all his life, suggested that I see his family physician, I agreed. The taxi dropped me there, and I was sure I had the wrong address. The building was a shack. I went to the front door, which, by the way, was mounted on rusted hinges, and forced it open, stuck my head inside, and I scanned the office looking for jars of leeches or potions, but there were none. And a doctor emerged out of nowhere, and he had a kind face and manner. He gave me a polite namaskar and asked me what the purpose of my visit was. So I showed him my toe, and he crouched down and he looked at it carefully, and then he stood up and he said to me, "Will you please remove your shirt?" So remove my shirt. I took my shirt off, and he traced his finger up and down my spine, and after a while he told me to put my shirt back on, and he explained, he said, "There's nothing to worry about. This is simply the result of a previous injury. You're very healthy, you can go, and the toe will clear up on its own in its own time." Then he invited me to stay for tea. So I declined, and I was horribly disappointed. I thought, this guy is not going to help me with the parasites in my toe. So I continued to worry about it, almost obsess about it, until a couple months later I was on a trip home to Boston. And I went to Mass General Hospital, confident that now I would have the solution. I saw a doctor there. I was shown to an examination room, and they told me to remove my shoes and socks and sit on a table. And a physician came in after a while. He picked up my chart, and he sat on a rolling stool, and he put the chart down and beelined, rolling the stool across the office, across the examination room to my toe. There was no eye contact. There was nothing said, and I thought, what an arrogant man. And that impressed me, because he must be a great doctor if he could get away with being that arrogant. He took his time, he inspected the toe, and he rolled himself back to a table and started writing out a prescription. And he was obviously very bored. He let out a deep sigh, and I thought, of course he's bored. It's Mass General Hospital. He's used to doing face transplants and really cool stuff like that. He's not interested in the infestation in my toe. But he handed me a prescription, and he said, "It's nothing but a fungal infection. Apply this topically for 2 weeks, and it will clear up." So I did. I went home, and religiously I applied the treatment, and after 2 weeks, the toe was completely unchanged. I went back to Mass General Hospital, and I saw another doctor. And he came in, sat in his stool, rolled his stool to my toe, and looked even a little bit more carefully, scraped it with a wooden instrument, and then put it on a slide and actually examined the scrapings under a microscope. And he said to me, and he was angry, he said, "There is no evidence whatsoever of a fungal infection." I think he was angry with me for believing what the first doctor had said. And I felt bad that I had let him down, that I didn't trust him. So he said he wanted yet another opinion. So he went out and came back with another doctor, this time the head of the dermatology department at Massachusetts General Hospital. He looked at my toe, and he had this expression of intense curiosity. He looked at it for a long time, and then he stood up triumphantly. He had a big, self-satisfied grin on his face, and he made this announcement: "There is nothing to worry about. This is simply the result of a previous injury. It will clear up on its own." I thought about that on the way home. Finally, it occurred to me that, in fact, there had been a previous injury. I was working in a warehouse. A 500-pound roll of vinyl had dropped edgewise on my toe some years prior. And I thought about that doctor in India. I thought about his kindness. and about his diagnosis, and I thought about how many diagnoses, how many illnesses he had diagnosed in patients by a simple examination of their spine. So I sat down and I wrote him a letter apologizing for distrusting him and letting him know that in a moment he figured out what it took me 2 appointments at Mass General and 3 highly qualified doctors to figure out.